There, right there, you see that?
What?
His pupils. For a second, he looks like a reptile.
A reptile.
What's happening here?
The world is fragile.
Bred ourselves into castes.
Time is running out.
Some to be our eyes and ears.
For both our people.
Some to be our muscles.
I mean, you're hunters.
Yes. Bred to be predators, but bred also to be controlled.
We need to create something better.
What was once one race is now two.
Part human, part us.
Look! Look at them! They're everywhere!
We don't really live in this world.
Two distinct species that have evolved. One above
We feed off of it.
and one below.
Aliens.
Have taken the hearts and minds of our leaders. They have recruited the rich and the powerful, and they have blinded us to the truth.
There's another group. They live among us. They look like us.
Our human spirit is corrupted. Why do we worship greed? Because outside the limit of our sight, feeding off us, perched on top of us from birth to death, are our owners.
I see them everywhere.
They have us. They control us. They are our masters. Wake up. They're all about you, all around you.
From what I've seen, every negative thought that flows into your head about yourself or somebody else is put there by these entities. And they want you to react to it. You know? And that will generate the negative emotional energy that they feed off of. Looshing. You got it right on. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's what it is. They want that loosh, and that's how they generate it.
We think extraterrestrials are using some interdimensional way of traveling.
It exists beyond the visible spectrum. So the fact that we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
And leaving no trace.
I know that this stuff exists because my father's role in the military brought him very close to it many times. So my father did 3 tours in the Vietnam War. And one of the projects they let him be in charge of was this technology that they introduced into Vietnam that almost brought the war to a standstill. And this technology was a night vision goggle. But it's not night vision as we have it now, okay? Because the night vision goggle was done in the red spectrum. And so when my father came back from Vietnam...
You mean infrared or...?
No, I'll explain.
Ordinary red.
No, ordinary red. Okay, so instead of seeing... When you look at night vision goggles now, you see green. Everything is translated into green for you. And human eye sees green, more colors, shades of green than any other color. But see, here's the thing. It started off as red. And so the night vision goggles were introduced to helicopter pilots and gunnery people in Vietnam. My father was part of this initial experiment with the troops that he commanded. And it was a disaster because the image was presented in red pixels, not green. And because of the technology being used at that time, it created very interesting effects that they could not deal with. So you had some officers that were part of this cohort of other officers that were all testing these new technologies for the military that had their troops always use these goggles. And those units became self-destructive. They went down in a horrid situation. My father was extremely practical, didn't want to see himself get destroyed in any way, wanted to return and get out. So as soon as he saw what was going on with these goggles, he had his people take them off. And my father tells the story of the very first time they're out with them, and they're flying along, and he's in the front of the helicopter with the pilot. And all of a sudden, in a very peaceful area, not anything going on at all, the gunner in his on the starboard side of his helicopter starts firing wildly at their height, not at anything on the ground, but in an area that he was shooting at, and basically causing other helicopters in their little flotilla to have to react. And my father goes on back to the gunner, basically demanding, "What the hell, dude? What are you shooting at?" And the kid was reacting to what he had seen. And he's describing to my father that he was shooting at these basically flying demons that were flying alongside the helicopter. And he knew they were coming to get him because they were gesturing at him and they could see him. And so he reacted, and he started shooting his Bren gun, big 50 caliber slugs at these things, right? And they were flying along right next to the helicopter, so he's firing out directly from the helicopter, and there are other helicopters in the vicinity, so it caused all kinds of problems. And this goes on repeatedly, week after week after week. Every time they try and use these night vision goggles, at some point they encounter monsters, true monsters. Now, officers had been told not to wear these. Okay, the pilots were told not to wear them. But my dad put them on to see what the hell was going on, and to hear him describe it, it was like being in the worst kind of a demonic gothic hell. That you'd look out at the tops of trees and you'd see these creatures with big wings and claws and everything come flying off of the tops of the trees. But you take the goggles off and there's not even a disturbance in the fog above the canopy of the trees. And it was tied to the red image. As soon as they went to green, all of this kind of stuff disappeared.
Of course. And we don't have time.
Yeah, I know.
Me studying Pythagoreanism and vibrations, we could speak a lot about this, but let's not even go there. But one question: are these connected to the modern night vision goggles people used to see UFOs,
Correct.
Third generation or whatever they're called? Is it the same technology?
It's the same technology. It's just that the translation is done through a different phase alignment, and we're not seeing everything that the goggles could show you.
And they don't connect it to heat signatures either, right? Organic.
They don't do that, and then they also don't do it with a red display. Now, the red aspect of it is interesting because the green display comes from electrons, not photons, okay? And it comes from an electron transmission. Presumably, they were still doing electron transmission. They were just turning it into a red filter.
They have the technology to go from one dimension to another, to appear and disappear.
Appearing and disappearing? Moving between dimensions? When these lights are seen, in my opinion, it's the result of a technological process. Some type of technology is involved. An alien connection to these seemingly intangible orbs, often referred to as ghost lights. They offer a brief glimpse into other dimensions beyond our reality. Were they extraterrestrial from another planet? Were they ultra-dimensional from a different dimension? That all depends who you ask. In the world, there is an invisible sea of wireless data. Radio waves, microwaves, and various other frequencies exist everywhere that go unseen. And in fact, what humans are able to perceive with the naked eye is extremely limited.
The human visible spectrum goes only from 380 to 770 nanometers. This means that humans are only capable of perceiving 1 octave of light of this entire spectrum. The fact that we cannot see the rest of the spectrum does not mean it's not there.
Technology has enabled humankind to become aware of much that cannot be perceived with the 5 senses. But could there be far more that exists, even outside the range of humanity's most sophisticated technology? Perhaps even hidden dimensions and alternate universes that exist right next to our own. They've encountered an entity from another dimension.
We know science has been able to measure all sorts of invisible things. The electromagnetic field, the heat signature of objects and people. So the fact that we don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Any contact that we have with an interdimensional being is actually happening beyond our normal visual spectrum. There is no question in my mind that there is more than one species right here on the Earth that is operating within different frequency ranges. That's why we don't really see them. Most of our extraterrestrial encounters are interdimensional. These beings are not coming from far away. They are actually within our human plane, only existing in another dimension. And all we're doing is crossing from one dimension to another within this earthly reality. In fact, I believe that all extraterrestrial encounter is interdimensional.
The Rendlesham case, if true, and by that I just mean if it was not a military operation to test combat readiness or whatever in the midst of a nuclear crisis or something, would seem to fall into the same basic pattern as the Washington National sightings, in that it seems like a very deliberate, orchestrated event. It doesn't sound like something landed in the woods and people happened across it. It seems like that was the entire point, was for people to see it. And psychologically, that would seem to be misdirection on behalf of someone, wanting to impress us, wanting to perpetuate this extraterrestrial mythos.
The escalation of the artificial alien threat scenario since that time has been and continues to be extremely obvious.
Maybe we're not really dealing with outer space, but ultra-terrestrials coming from parallel space.
And what better way to do that than land in the midst of a sensitive installation and get a lot of people really uptight and really nervous, and show us what amounts to a special effects display. So I find the Rendlesham case very interesting, because I think on one hand it could very easily be military, testing psychological reactions to an unforeseen event. But on the same token, that's exactly the sort of behavior that I would expect of indigenous humanoids living in our midst. So it's an interesting question, and it casts light on what I like to think of as this misinformation campaign being waged against us by an intelligence. And when you get deeper and deeper into this, it seems like we have disinformation campaign on top of disinformation campaign, and some of it is us, obviously, when you investigate, and some of it is not so easily ascribed to human intelligence. And I'm forced to consider that, at least hypothetically, we're dealing with a non-human species that lives right here on this planet.
The shadow biosphere. It is possible that we have weird life here on Earth, like life we're potentially able to detect, but we're blind to.
Yeah, the shadow biosphere is this idea that there might have been other original life events that happened on Earth that were independent from the original life event that led to us and all of the life that we know on Earth. And therefore, there could be aliens, in the sense they have a different origin event, living among us. And it was proposed by Paul Davies that aliens could be right under our noses. The idea is, like, it could literally be anywhere around us. And if you think actually about the discovery of, like, viruses and bacteria, you know, for a long time they were kind of a shadow biosphere. It was life that was around us but invisible.
The cryptoterrestrial hypothesis basically sort of maintains that we are sharing the planet with a species that's possibly as far in advance of us as we are from chimpanzees. In certain areas of development, not necessarily everything. We obviously have some things that the alleged cryptoterrestrials, or CTs as I refer to them for brevity, don't have. It seems likely to me that the CTs utilize imagery that we associate with extrasolar aliens to disguise their presence, to kind of mask where they're coming from, and to throw us off the scent. I think one thing that this secret civilization among us has going for it is a very prolonged, maintained, and very well-cultivated sense of stealth. I think that they thrive on secrecy. I think that's a big asset. I think they're flesh and blood. I think a lot of them could possibly pass for human.
There, right there, you see that?
What?
His pupils. For a second, he looks like a reptile.
A reptile.
What's happening?
What was once one race is now two.
Part human, part us.
Two distinct species.
There's another group. They live among us.
One above,
They look like us.
and one below.
We don't really live in this world. We're feed off of it.
But this takes it a little bit further in saying that, you know, all of those examples had this common ancestry in the last universal common ancestor of life on Earth. So maybe there was a different origin event, and that life is weirder still and might be among us.
And I think that they share the planet with us, and I think they're nomadic, and it seems to me that they are here to stay, in the sense that they've been here a long time. If you look at folklore, we find recurring references to them in different disguises, but then again, that seems to be kind of the hallmark of the whole thing. I think that UFOs are their latest disguise, because we automatically associate that with aliens from other planets. And There's nothing inherently unsound about the extraterrestrial hypothesis, and it's not mutually incompatible with the cryptoterrestrial idea. But nevertheless, I think that when we look at the evidence of like hybridization programs like Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, I don't see what sense that would really make if it's an extrasolar species interacting with us. Why they would have any interest in human DNA like they're alleged to have. On the other hand, if we share a common ancestor with these beings, it begins to make sense. And when you look at certain cases that have reproductive overtones, it's very interesting to consider that we're dealing with a genetically impoverished species right here on Earth that is utilizing us for genetic stock.
I can't imagine a Dan Rather or a Tom Brokaw, if that were to come to their attention, a story of that magnitude, that they wouldn't do something with it.
There certainly is enough evidence based on what I've looked at. For instance, the Linda Moulton Howe documentary in Denver for the CBS affiliate there called A Strange Harvest. Since 1975 to 1980 when she made the documentary, there's at least 9,000 cattle mutilations. Now, the government said that the mutilations were normal, your desert predator did these. But they weren't. This is the mutilation. New Mexico State Police did the investigation on it, and they cut out certain parts and the cut was made with a laser beam far sharper than anything we have. As a matter of fact, they were able to determine that they cut between the cells and didn't cut the cells themselves. We presently don't have this kind of technology.
Well, it's a mute. This time it ain't cattle, it's humans. There's human mutilations now. We're gonna get into this. We're gonna find out who or what's doing it. If it's Satanists or even aliens.
The following clips are from a never-before-seen interview with Philip J. Corso.
One of the strangest things, as far as I'm concerned, is on these mutilations, they took the sex organs, and the nearest thing to a human sex organ are cattle sex organs. And by the way, they cut those with a type of laser cutter, which didn't even cut through the cells.
Cut around them, yeah.
Cut around the cells. That's how perfect it was. Hey, we have no such thing. A handheld cutter, a laser, we have no such thing.
But what is mistaken for a UFO is something just as new to science. Invisible flying predators, which can be photographed with the aid of an ultraviolet filter 18A and Ectacolor film. This was first accomplished by Trevor James Constable, a UFO researcher for a quarter of a century. Constable, in Southern California, builds equipment which gathers orgone energy, or etheric or biological energy. Years ago, he noted that his energy-gathering devices attracted invisible critters. He also photographed them at 35,000 feet through an ultraviolet filter near a commercial jet. They were invisible to the pilot. This is an artist's drawing by Don Dixon of one of the frames of the research camera's film showing the invisible flying critter. Apparently, the predator sought by farmers and county sheriffs nationwide is the animal killer. The invisible flying predator. There seems no other explanation of what has happened to the thousands of mutilated animals. Once again, a new scientific door is opened, and through it we see invisible animals which can fly by degravitating themselves and which seem to live off the biological energy of other land-bound animals. They may or may not have any connection with the spacecraft UFOs, but it seems they have been mistaken for configurated UFOs with their humanoid crewmen, bound on their separate mission of the study of the Earth's inhabitants by means of kidnappings and sample gathering of Earthman devices.
We are creating our own reality through temporal causality loops and radiation emissions of human thought into zero-point energy fields. These fields are also known as zero-point fields, the M field, and the morphic field. As I've described this in a previous documentary, I won't describe it here. Human thought radiation emissions given off into these fields create constructive and destructive interference. This is how relationships are formed. The Greys supposedly have the ability to intercept these fields and project thoughts into our minds, manipulating our free will, making us carry out horrific acts. They do this as they feed off the negative energy given off by human subjects during the actions. The Greys are able to make appearances in the third density, giving us sightings. However, they hide within the fourth density to feed off our energy without us knowing it. These orbs are beyond the visible wavelength, making them invisible to the naked eye. However, they surround us right now. They have been captured on infrared camera many times. NASA is the most notable cause, but the Mexican military also caught them on camera. Many people on YouTube also caught these orbs on camera. They've been captured hundreds, if not thousands of times. Dr. Klaus Hinnemann, a former NASA employee, wrote a book called The Orb Project. In the book, he reported that under controlled conditions, using multiple cameras, it appeared that the orb showed some type of intelligence when asked to appear on camera by the photographer. When the Mexican military caught them on camera on March 5, 2004, the pilots claimed they felt as if the orbs knew they were under surveillance. A man who captured these orbs on camera asked them to put on a show in which they replied to.
Come on, give us a show, Kurt. Wow.
As the orbs resonate on a wavelength beyond visible light, it means they can see us, but we can't see them. So what are they? Trevor James Constable, a former Marine, was one of the first people to photograph these orbs. After reading several books about esoteric energy and doing research of his own, he decided to investigate, so set up ultraviolet and infrared cameras. He caught the same orbs on tape, translucent with a hole in the center. After reviewing his pictures and extending in further research, Trevor had come to a conclusion. He believes that orbs are an amobia-like form of life which exist on Earth and in the universe beyond our sight. He also claimed when provoked, they become predatory.
The project was very much alive and viable, and part of the project involved aliens. Anatomically, the Greys looked stripped much like this. They were sexless. They did not procreate. They reproduced by a form of cloning.
Since 1938, they've been making clone people.
And using surrogate mothers that were typically human mothers, where somehow the seed was implanted and they went through the first trimester, and then the incomplete child was removed. There's thousands of medical cases and documentation of women who had a baby starting to grow, and then suddenly it isn't there anymore. This was what happened. These aliens were using human mothers as surrogates.
So they were hypnotizing women, said they were being invaded by aliens. And the fetus starts growing, right? Needs food. Well, they can use cows and sheep, too. It's, again, a food source. That's all we need. After about 14 weeks, all of a sudden that fetus is gone. Because they've learned to take, that's when the fetus starts developing its own blood supply. Then they've used the pituitary hormone extract that they have, which accelerates the being that grows. And the original technology was given to our government by the Greys.
And after that, they were taken to the underground laboratories and they were grown the rest of the way in their underground systems of tubes, not vacuum, but liquid tubes and other systems, until they were adults. They were grown and born, if that's the proper term, as an adult, about 3.5 feet high. They didn't have any children. They looked very much like this. They had very strange internal structures. They could not eat. Their digestive tract was almost totally atrophied. And they had to absorb nutrition by sitting in it in a vat, absorbed it through their skin, and about 2 weeks later they excreted the waste products again through their skin.
Now we discussed the different type of aliens, the service to self entities and the service to other entities. Well, when you go into the fourth density, and this doesn't necessarily apply to the service to other entities because they're more like us, they're human, but when you're talking about little gray guys and reptoids, they tend to have a nutrition requirements that are 50% spiritual and 50% physical. Now, what the physical component is the blood product, which they don't consume, they don't drink it, they actually bathe in it and they absorb the nutrients through osmosis. They'll have tanks will just, soak in the blood.
Now, I'm going to tell you something a little bit different about the alien species.
The Greys supposedly have the ability to project thoughts into our minds, manipulating our free will, making us carry out horrific acts. They do this as they feed off the negative energy given off by human subjects during the actions. The Greys are able to make appearances in the third density, giving us sightings. However, they hide within the fourth density to feed off our energy without us knowing.
Well, spiritual nutrition is called loosh, L-O-O-S-H. This is what they call it. What is loosh? Loosh is negative human, emotional, psychic energy. Okay, what is that? The opposite of love. Hate, anger, fear, despair, loneliness, heartbreak, anxiety. When you watch a scary movie, you're generating loosh. When somebody breaks your heart and you're sitting home feeling sorry for yourself, you're producing loosh. They love to get somebody like me upset. That's right. And this is one of the reasons why they like to stick us in these big cities. Keeps us, it's like cattle in a stockyard. Why would you want to have your cattle scattered across the country? It's much easier to manage them when they're in one little place. And you can collect that energy really easy, Perhaps the cell phone towers may even be part of that. I mean, I don't know how they collect this energy, but, you've got a place like the Getty built underneath L.A. County. Can you imagine how much loosh L.A. probably produces on a daily basis with all the crap that goes on in that city? Ghostbusters, Den of Iniquity. Well, you know what? All these negative guys, we talk about these reptoids and whatnot, and they feed on this loosh, this negative energy. Well, again, what's the opposite of that? They need this negative energy to survive. Then what's poisonous to them? Love, happiness, joy, lack of fear.
The bad news ones, there are 9 races of alien populations. To look at a human being as a bag of food. They're not cannibals. They don't eat the flesh and the bones and all that kind of stuff. They use the glandular secretions of animals and human beings as a mixture of the vitamins for their food. They get high off of our adrenal gland substances called adrenal chrome. Adrenal chrome. Adrenal chrome. Adrenal chrome.
Because it's very likely that if the Cryptoterrestrials are indeed real and indeed sharing the planet with us, that they are marginalized and that they have a very compromised population. if that's so, then they might very well need to replenish their genetic stock from time to time. And to do so under the auspices of being aliens from another star system, another planet, would fall right into kind of what we expect. And it would be the perfect smokescreen, I think. I think it would be very effective, and I think it would fool a great many people. And if you look at popular culture, we tend to be fascinated by accounts of aliens to the point where the word aliens is synonymous with the extraterrestrial hypothesis. But I don't think the extraterrestrial idea is the final word. I think it's worth considering, but I also think that the idea that we're sharing the planet, as ludicrous as it may sound when you first consider it, has some good circumstantial evidence to back it up and to complement some of the ideas associated with it. So I wouldn't rule it out at all, and I think it's a real intriguing idea, and the more I look into it, the more credible I find it.
Everything you know is wrong.
All of the astronauts were Freemasons. All of them, ladies and gentlemen. There's a photograph in the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C. of Neil Armstrong on the moon's surface, supposedly. We know that he really was not there when this photograph was taken. In his spacesuit, holding his Masonic apron in front of his groin. The effect upon the people of the world was that if we could go to the moon, other creatures from other worlds could travel to our Earth. Especially an advanced race of other creatures.
So we could find it. We don't have to go out into the stars to look for aliens, just here on Earth.
Do you think that's a serious possibility that we should explore with the tools of science? Like, this should be a serious effort?
I think yes and no. And I mean yes, because I think it's a serious hypothesis, and I think it's worth exploring, and it is certainly more economical to look for signs of alien life on Earth than it is to go and build spacecraft and send robots to other planets. And that was one of the reasons it was proposed is, well, if we do find an example of another original life on Earth, it's hugely informative because it means the original life is not a rare event. If it happened twice on the same planet, that means it's probably pretty probable given conditions are right.
Primary theories are from another planet or from another dimension.
I think those are the primary. I mean, there's certainly origins that we probably can't conceptualize as humans because our meat is stuck in 3D and we don't understand, and our IQs are only so high. So there might be some origins that we don't understand.
In terms of like interdimensional travel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you talk to mainstream physicists, they say like crossing dimensions physically is kind of a trope of sci-fi, and that's why I used an example. And I know some physicists don't like me talking about this theory, but it is a theory, so the holographic principle, which was originally conceived to explain how information is encoded on an event horizon of a black hole, which is a distance away from the singularity of a black hole where if you cross it, you're fucked because you're going to get ripped to shreds or you're not coming back. And that principle talks about how information basically from higher dimensional space can be encoded in lower dimensional space. And the easiest example is like us casting a shadow on a sidewalk, right? 3-dimensional object, 2D shadow on a sidewalk. If you lived in 2-dimensional space, flatland, you'd be tripped out. What the fuck am I seeing? But they just don't know that it's really just a person in higher dimensional space. So is some of the obviously we have physical material that's in 3-dimensional space that we've recovered, but at least maybe some of the phenomenon is really operating in higher spatial dimensions, but is either being projected or quasi-projected into our 3D plus time space.
This is when I see the aliens, I see them as a holographic perception that's projected. The source of it is a whole other subject. They can take any form they want.
In episode 22, Return of the Archons, the Enterprise crew are on a planet with a people almost completely void of emotion, worshipping a god named Landru. Not far in, Landru finds out that the visitors are there and captures them. However, Spock notices something important.
Interesting. They're
Their reaction to your defiance was remarkably similar to the reaction of computers when fed insufficient or contradictory data. What is your theory, Mr. Smith? This is a soulless society, Captain. It has no spirit, no spark. All is indeed peace, factory, and tranquil, not the machine. All parts working in unison.
So Kirk decides to take out Landru, whoever he is.
This is me. Here's what's happening. Projection. Yes, it's fun. Let's have a look at the projector.
Probably saw this one coming, but in the end we find out that Landru is in fact just a big fakey machine.
Here's what's happening. Projection.
This is when I see the aliens, I see them as a holographic perception that's projected. The source of it is an older subject. They can take any form they want.
These videotapes are known as fame porn, with the recent Hollywood and political scandal of sexual abuse. More information about these tapes have come out. Some involve snuff films which are sold within these underground pornographic markets. The Illuminati is a secret society whose goal is for a new world order to control the population without dominating them by giving them small freedoms. The Illuminati continue today. They're globalists who want globalism for a one-world government.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, we will be. We have a real chance at this new world order.
So why are people harvesting children's adrenochrome? They sacrifice children for the demons. This is where we get into the rabbit hole. These extraterrestrials are still on Earth today. When researching adrenochrome, victims of the rituals claim the people conducting the ritual were doing it for aliens which are seen as demons.
These guys who are manipulating my mind and programming me for mind control purposes claim, and these criminals in control of our country as well, claim to be demons and aliens. So it was easy for me to accept the idea that what was happening was in fact being perpetrated by demons. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as aliens. That would be foolish of me to even say anything like that at all. But what I am saying is that it was my experience that these were people claiming to be aliens. If there's a reality out there pertaining to any alien influence, we need to sort out the government misinformation and disinformation and mind manipulation techniques that they're using. I know for a fact that the plan is to make all of us feel totally helpless, that what's happening is beyond our realm to affect because we've been taken over by aliens.
At rituals, they are so powerful, their evil presence, there's such an evilness about them, and they want out of this other dimension. Old ones are called out, and they are what Christianity would have called the demons.